It is Cooper Mays. I'm Dave Hooker. Welcome as we go into the Vol Report brought to you by City Heating and Air Conditioning. That's cityheatandair.com. Integrity matters. Cooper, how have you been, sir?
I'm great. I'm great. Can't complain at all, actually.
Fantastic. Now I see that the backdrop changed a little bit, and I wanted to ask you maybe a painful question, and that is you destroy Clemson, fantastic showing by the Vols and you. And then if you can tell me what you came home to.
Yeah, so my apartment, the apartment above me, their sprinkler system busted because it got so cold, and then all that water that went from that it just traveled down into my apartment and went through all the walls and the ceiling and such. So I kind of got back on the 31st, I think is when we got back and opened the door, and I had to like take a double take on my apartment and make sure it was mine because it was all messed up. But they're getting it fixed, hopefully, fast.
Oh, how about your stuff? What's the one thing you lost or may have lost that you're like, oh man, that stinks?
Hopefully not my PC. My PC, I'm a big gamer, so if hopefully my PC is not ruined, that would be probably my biggest loss.
What do you play? What's your game?
Call of Duty, actually, I'm sure you're familiar a little bit or probably heard of it. Still going strong. So that would be what I would be playing right now. I would have been playing it all January, but haven't been able to. That's the only bad thing about having a PC is there's not much, moving it and bringing it around and stuff. So we're uh we're sitting here and we're being bored all January.
Oh man. Well, maybe a book or yoga or something. Is there anything you could dive into?
I'm sure I could try. I'm not the big book and yoga kind of guy, but I don't know. We can try something else new. I'm sure that would be probably a better time.
There you go. I want to talk about your little brother and a couple of other things. Also, want to talk about one Vol that I know you're fond of that is departed with his eligibility. So, all of that and more as it's brought to you by City Heating and Air Conditioning, cityheatandair.com, and Integrity Matters. When your unit needs service, call City Heating and Air Conditioning because anybody else might try to upcharge you and get something else. Not cityheatandair.com. City Heating and Air Conditioning will prescribe exactly what you need for your HVAC unit, and that's what they will take care of. So, wanted to ask you about the way things ended in general with the SEC. Georgia with a dominant win over Texas Christian. I know you don't watch a lot of ball when you're not a part of it, but just your thoughts on the way the SEC ended up because it looks as or more dominant as ever in general, including you guys.
Yeah, I mean it's always interesting seeing how the bowl season kind of shakes out because this is probably the only kind of time that I watch a little bit of football, honestly, when I'm not playing it. So I don't know. It's really just kind of cool to see, or just interesting for me to see how dominant the SEC really is, and how kind of it's just different. It's a different conference as far as I think the biggest thing is really the upfront battle. Like in the trenches, you see a big difference in SEC and the other conferences. There's a few teams in the Big Ten that compete at a high level, I guess, probably in the trenches, like Ohio State and Notre Dame. But yeah, it's just there's a lot of big time wins for the SEC, and obviously the national championship was a blowout. It wasn't even close. It wasn't a good game to watch. I honestly turned it off at a certain point, but yeah, it's kind of what I always thought, but it has to be proved every year that the SEC is kind of reigns supreme in college football, and I think it'll kind of always be that way as far as I'm playing for sure.
How much did you notice whatever part of the game you watched? Just to me, it was very evident early that Georgia was winning the battle up front and that TCU couldn't match that on both sides of the ball. How much did that stand out to you?
It stood out. It stood out a lot. The first drive, kind of me and my dad were sitting there, and when they came out and stopped them, and then took a touchdown, took it right down the field. I mean, it wasn't even particularly hard. It looked like so. I knew once they started getting key stops early in the game and then scoring at will, you could see how the offensive line of Georgia was just handling their defense pretty easy. So I kind of could tell that it wasn't going to be that close of a game.
You guys in Tennessee and TCU were kind of similar in that you made runs, both unranked teams. You made incredible runs. You did it in a tougher conference. And I'm curious, when you watch, both driven by the offense, when you watch their offense, what similarities and differences do you see with your offense?
First thing I would see is their speed. I would say that they look really fast. I will say TCU, they surprised me a lot. I didn't watch them during the season at all, but when I turned their game on and saw how kind of fast their whole skill unit was, it was pretty impressive for me to see that. But I would say, obviously, it's going to be hard to find people that are really comparable to our offense because we have such like a niche kind of spot in college football with our offense and its tempo. So it's hard to find people that are that similar, but I did see similarities. Yeah.
Tell me more about that niche from somebody that's never seen Tennessee football before. Is it the splits? Is it the tempo? What makes you guys different, you think, from other offenses in the nation?
Yeah, that splits and tempo would be our the two things that kind of mix together and create that different dynamic. But it's just really hard to hide stuff, and it's really hard to play defense against us because there's so much space involved. You have to cover so much ground, and I think you kind of got to commit to one or the other. You can commit to stopping the deep ball in the passing game, or you can commit to stopping the run and hoping that your DBs can play man with our receivers and kind of be more on an island. So it's a combination of both. I think if you stop the run heavy, then it's going to leave big holes in the passing game. And I think if you know put the drop eight defense out there, it's going to open up a lot for the run game. So it's hard to fight.
Yeah, it's been fascinating to watch. I want to get to the next maze. So your dad played in the NFL, was a Vol. Your brother played for Tennessee, has gone on to the NFL. You play for Tennessee, you'll go on to the NFL and have a fantastic career. I'm calling that shot right now. Call me Mel Kiper of the Knoxville area. So I've got first round pick. I've got you on my board.
There you go.
There you go. It's done. It's done. Just go ahead and mark it down. Go ahead and start spending the money. Don't do that. Um, but there's a young man named Camp who is your little brother that's got some size to him. Tell me about Camp. I love this.
He's a 7-year-old, my little brother, and I don't know exactly how tall he is, but he's about 5 foot 130, maybe around in there somewhere.
Seven.
And
7
yeah,
years.
he's 7 years old. He'll be 8 in the summer. So he's a smart kid. He was the head of his class or whatever as far as grades. He's I think he's got 98s and above in all classes except for one, and that's handwriting. So we're working on the handwriting still, but he's a pretty bright little kid.
Who's going to teach you handwriting?
I don't know. I think that'll probably be he gets frustrated about it. He says he'll never be a straight A student because that's his only B, and he gets mad about it. But I don't really know. I think handwriting is something that kind of just once you get to a certain level, if it's bad, it's just bad. That's how it is.
Yeah, my son actually has the worst handwriting in the history of the world, and he says the same thing. So, do you expect him to be a top prospect in the class of 2033? I guess it would be.
Yeah, it's somewhere around there. I mean, he has the red carpet. If he isn't, then that's probably more on him because he's supposed to be 6'7", and he's got two big brothers that play, so all the eyes are going to be on him. So it's all up to him, but it seems like a pretty easy path.
So, is he a Tennessee fan?
I don't, man. You don't really know with Camp. I mean, people that have seen him know that he's kind of just he's very off the wall. He kind of just goes with the flow and doesn't really. I don't know. He's a different cat. He could be one thing one day and then a fan of another thing the next day, I guess.
That kind of sounds familiar. Maybe like his older brother.
Maybe. He's definitely a little bit like me. A lot probably like me.
Take me back to your teenage days, a little older in Camp, but I'm curious your impression and how you grew up viewing Tennessee football because when I was your age, they were competing for championships, and it was Tennessee, Florida in the '90s. So that's my impression. But there's been like a decade where I wonder if Tennessee's lost some of those young fans. What was your impression of Tennessee football, even slightly from afar, as you were growing up?
Yeah, growing up, they kinda lost me. Like, my uncle played, I think, from 2003 to 7, maybe, I think was his tenure at Tennessee. He played here and played center. And then, I mean, I guess I was a fan during that time, but that was when I was really young. And then kinda up until middle school, I wasn't really a Tennessee fan. I kinda liked Alabama more because they were winning a lot, and that was cool to me. So and then during middle school, I kinda got back on the bandwagon and kinda ended up liking Tennessee a lot more because we started doing a little bit better. When Butch was here, he was recruiting really high and had some good years. So that kinda brought me back in. And then obviously in recruiting, you kinda lose your fan your fan status. So I was kinda up for grabs at that point. But I always liked Tennessee from kinda that was the team I always followed in the end. That makes sense.
What did your dad say when you kind of liked Alabama?
He never really said anything. I think we were pretty bad during the years I liked Alabama, so he probably looked at me and was like, "Can't even blame you, honestly." So who knows? Maybe I'm just a fair weather fan at
No,
the end of the
I,
day.
I don't think you are. You end up signing with Tennessee. Do you realize the impact though that you and this crew under Josh Heupel are really having? I mean the type of credibility and equity that you're building with young men that might be 12, 13, 14 years old that really pay attention. I mean, does that ever occur to you?
Only when you put it in perspective like that. I've never really thought about it. Well, I tell people all the time, once you get into college football, you kind of just realize how not a big of a deal it is, but it really is a big deal. But it's hard to see it through the different perspectives.
All right.
Like
So
when you're in it, it's just kind of it's just what you do.
so as far as camp, 7 years old, I've got him listed. He'll be about what 6 foot. I want to say 6 foot, but you had him projected at 6'7". Isn't that what his charts are saying?
Yeah, like 6'7" to 300 to 330, something like that.
Good gracious! So is he definitely a football player, or is he a swing man in basketball?
He likes football. He wants to be a quarterback. Makes no sense. Like if you see him living room, he'll just be throwing football back and forth all day.
Wow. So I'm going to project him as an offensive lineman. I'm going to project him as an offensive tackle. We can't be mad at me about that.
I don't think Cam gets mad about much in life. He's he's living the life right now. He just doesn't really know it.
Nice. Yeah. Yeah. Wait till he gets a little bit older and stuff starts getting real, like his apartment getting flooded.
He'll figure it out. He'll figure it out.
Jerome Carvin headed to the NFL. I don't think that's a great surprise. What does Tennessee? What do you guys have to replace in a Jerome Carvin? Not just from a player standpoint, but a leadership standpoint, a person standpoint.
Definitely a leadership. That's the biggest hit. He's a great leader and just a really positive person to have in your room and on the practice field every day. Um, Not and more than that, just he has, if you look at base level stuff, just a tons of productivity, a lot of ball that he had played, knows football, understands scheme and what we're trying to get done with the plays. He's definitely a big piece to what we were doing and a huge piece as far as motivation and leadership and just football intelligence. So yeah, somebody's gonna have to step up big time to fill his shoes. It's gonna be hard for sure.
You're really close to Jerome, right? Or still are?
Yes, indeed. Yeah, I'm a big Jerome fan.
Why are you such a big Jerome fan? What is it about him that stood out?
We've talked about this a couple times, probably when I talk about people that I like, but I love people that are just consistent and you know what you're going to get out of them every day.
Yeah.
That's a very attractive quality to me. Like if I find that in a person, like I'll probably be their friend. And if you come in and have the right mentality every day, and you got a smile on your face, and you're lifting everybody up around you, like I'll probably have a lot of respect for you. And I'll probably like you. So that's the kind of guy Jerome is, and I'm drawing people like that.
I want to talk about some of those guys that need to step up in replacing Jerome Carvin and Darnell Wright, which is going to be tough because he's just an incredible physical athlete. But it's brought to you by City Heating and Air Conditioning, cityheatandair.com. They all are also hiring. If you want a fantastic job, fantastic group, integrity, they are all about that. Integrity matters at City Heating and Air Conditioning. So, who are some of the young guys? And I know there are transfers in. I'm not going to ask you to make early judgments on them because I don't think that's really fair. But who are some of the young guys that you've seen a glimmer that they could step in and fill a couple of positions on that offensive line?
Definitely Addison Nichols, and let's see, Ollie Lane, not a young guy, but he's a guy that'll be fighting for that spot. Andre Carrick will I'm sure will be fighting for that spot. That when you go to tackles, looks like John Campbell, the new transfer. I haven't gotten to meet him yet, but it seems like he'll be settling in on the tackle spot or competing for one. Gerald Mincy and JJ Crawford, they're going to be at fighting for spots as well. There's really it's really up for anybody. I could go through a lot of names here, but there's a ton of people that could seize an opportunity. So I'm really excited to see who will pull away.
How would you compare the depth of guys that you could point to in the offensive line room that can play as opposed to when you first got to Tennessee?
How you said, what's the difference?
Yeah, so the depth when you came in that you said, "Oh, he can play, he can play, he can play," and nowadays he can play. I mean, how different is the depth?
Shoot, I would honestly say when I first got here, there was a really solid, I'd say two deep, like there was probably whole two strings of offensive line that could play. We had a really loaded offensive line. Now we didn't play that well. Probably COVID year, I think, is what I'm talking about. COVID year, we didn't play very well. It was not a good year, obviously overall, but for the offensive line, it wasn't. But that was probably the most loaded O line room I've ever been a part of. You look at Jameer Johnson and Wanye Morris were our two left tackles. They went to Texas A&M and Oklahoma and started. Um, Left guard had Trey Smith, Brandon Kennedy, and me, and Jerome both played a lot of center. Jerome could have played both guard spots. Cade was at right guard, is where he ended up settling in at, and then Darnell was our right tackle. And Kayron Calvert, who had started a lot of games the year before, was at right tackle too. So I mean, I could go through a lot of names here, but there was some serious depth. Like these are like people that have started a lot of SEC games all on the same O line. So that was probably the most loaded O line I've ever been a part of.
Wow. So when you talk about going from being a backup guy or hoping to play to being a starter, what's the greatest challenge from making that transition? Because some of these guys are going to have to do that.
It's more in your mind. I mean, a lot of people are strong enough to do it, and whatever you want to call it. But it's all about knowing and understanding the game of football. Really hard for people to do sometimes, but just a lot of people get fixated and they know what they're like. They'll hear the play call and they'll be like, "Okay, my job is this." But there's so much more that goes into the game than just knowing what you yourself has to do. Until you understand like what the whole defense is trying to accomplish and what you're trying to accomplish, that's when stuff gets really easy, and it allows you to play at a higher speed and confidence, which is mostly what football is, just going out there and playing with a lot of confidence.
All right, buddy. Text me when your computer is fixed, and then I will have my son help me link up Call of Duty, and then I want to take you on and see how long I last.
Man, probably not very long. Probably not very long. I'll give you a chance though. I'll give you a couple.
Yeah, just give me a couple of shots. Like a sniper rifle, and you're very very far away.
I can let you play camp. That would probably be. He probably wouldn't be friendly either, but
Okay, I'm willing to take camp on. Camp class of 2033 or whatever that would be. I will take camp on, and maybe I can graduate up to Cooper's level at some point.
One day, one day.
We'll give it a shot. He's Cooper Mays. I'm Dave Hooker. The Vol Report with Cooper Mays brought to you by City Heat and Air Conditioning, cityheatandair.com. Integrity matters. This has been a presentation of Off the Hook Sports.